Yeah, can we at least get a response from somebody so we know you're out there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Oh, whoa. Okay. Now we hear lots of you. Okay.
I actually do have one question I hope you'll mention. I once knew how to do this, and I've forgotten how, in a formula, to call up a cell on a different tab in that same worksheet.
Okay. Sounds good. You get the prize because you're the only one that asked for anything, so, you know, whoever asks gets their answer.
We're going to give people just another
Is
minute.
your hand out?
I sent that out in the email inviting everyone, referring to the manual that's on the ARC and giving you page numbers.
Oh, I don't see it. Okay, hang on.
So if you're on the ARC, you want to go to the
I see.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you don't need that. That's just so that you know. I don't even know which topics you guys are going to want unless you don't tell me, in which case I'm going to just go for it myself. But
okay.
But since well, can we start or are we not ready to?
Yeah, go ahead and start. The last thing I'll want to say just is if you are able to mute us on your phone, that would be great if you could do so, and then unmute to ask questions or to respond to something Sandy might have to ask. Otherwise, we hear every single thing that's happening at your desk, including even a paper moving. And please don't put us on hold. If you can't put us on mute and something comes up, go ahead and just hang up and then dial right back in when you can. If you put us on hold, we all have to hear your hold music. So that's my only last thing. And are there any questions about that before we get going? Okay.
Okay, and so before you put yourself on mute, unless you already have, I would love to know, so this is Intermediate Excel, which is basically any topic there is known to mankind in Excel. So if there is something specific, I had you print out certain pages because those were sort of in the intermediate range of topics, but we can really cover whatever you want. Now the first topic, because somebody did ask, was how to link cells. Linking cells means that you, for instance, maybe you want a cover sheet of just these numbers, or for whatever reason you want to bring some of those cells into another sheet, and yet you want to, if you change the numbers in one sheet, the other sheet needs to reflect that. So that would be linking. So we're going to start with that, but does anybody have any other topics, or do you want me to go ahead and do that and then ask? Oh, we've got somebody here that has topics. Let me, before I take those topics down, or actually, since Bridget is always so well prepared, I guess she'll write down the list for me. Welcome to class, by the way. My name is Sandy Rylander. If you haven't been to class before, know that this is your class, and so it is very much for whatever you want to do, and if you have any questions, ask them please immediately, especially on the phone. That's so difficult for me to see whether you're understanding or not. So stop me anytime and we'll go over whatever it is that you'd like to go over. So we do have a question here in Seattle, or not a question, but rather a topic. So what topic would you like?
For graphs, if you want to update the information, like add in, say you had December, January, and you wanted to add February and then have the graph update.
Oh, great, yes. So that was a question on chart. She's saying, well, what if you have January through June, so you have, let's say, the first half, and now you'd like to add, a few more months have gone by, and we'd like to add those as well. How do you add those to the chart? So first topic is linking, second topic is charts. Anything else?
I have a topic on the phone.
Go for it.
If I need to report on the number of unduplicated households that we served, and so I have a list of, 10,000 cases, and they all have client IDs, how do I separate out the duplicates, basically? Does that make sense?
So you could potentially delete the duplicates, and then count them?
Right.
Is that true?
Is it you want to delete the duplicates? Is that the deal?
I don't want to. Ideally, I would keep the data set, whole, but just be able to count the number of unduplicated cases in the data set.
So you want to group them by the case or by the name?
Yeah, or by client ID in case there's each client does have a unique ID. So, yeah, so we...
You need to know how to sort by one of the columns.
But sorting is not going to
Give her a count.
Give her a count. Well, I'll show you a way of doing it, and I'll try and think about other ways of doing it.
Okay, great.
For me, that's enough for right now. My small mind can't hold more than that. But for the rest of you, please, that won't take very much time to cover those topics. So be thinking of other topics while we're doing that. All right. So we've got some numbers here, and let's say I would like these totals to be reflected on the first page for January or whatever. So actually, why don't I don't think my first page is blank. Or is it? Oh, it is. How convenient. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to type in total. Or totals, I guess. And this is going to be January. Whoa, Sandra. There we go. And you know that if I want to fill that across, I can just go to the little fill handle here, which is the bottom right-hand corner of any cell, and drag that across. I'll just go through June. And so I want the total in here from the other page, and it is so simple. All I have to do is type in an equal sign, go to my other tab, click on the total that I'd like, and press enter.
Wow.
Let's do that again because that was so hard. Going here in February, typing equals, going here, clicking on here. Now, notice if I wanted to type it in myself, God only knows why you'd want to, but if you did, you can do equals, and then within single quotes, you can type the name of the tab, which is navigation selection, then an exclamation point, and the cell address. But I find it much easier to just do what I said. Now, it doesn't have to just be that one cell. You could, let's say you wanted to add these first three or something. You could say equals that, and then you can click in here and you can say plus. So I've got C9 already. If I want to add D9 and plus, I can do that. Okay, I don't want to right now because I want to show you something else. I'm just going to leave it C9, but I can even go to another sheet and multiply it by something else. Whatever you want, you just keep on going. But I'm going to press enter now. And what I wanted to show you was, notice that this is navigation B9, then C9. So even though it was fun to repeat just so that you saw the process again, you can also just drag the fill handle because you know Excel is smart enough to be able to fill that in for you. So now it's navigation selection B9, C9, D9, E9, F9, and G9. So all I had to do was the first one. And let's say I didn't even just want the totals. Let's say I wanted the data for God only knows what reason. That's starting not to make any sense now. But if I move this down, let's say I'm going to do totals and one other month. So I forget what do I have? Oh, no, let's say I just want ice cream. So I'll click on ice cream. This really makes absolutely no sense, but just so that you get the idea. So I've got ice cream here. I can do equals. Navigation. Oh, ice cream is actually above. I would have rather had nuts. Okay, well, let me just do this. Okay, what I wanted to say, I'm going to take that away. This would be, all I wanted to say was I can drag down, and that's giving me all of them going down, and then I can drag across and get them all across as well. So this is bringing me all the information from that other sheet, which makes no sense. You would never want to do that, right? But just in case. Yeah, question, Bridget?
Copy it or link it?
Link it, absolutely.
Okay.
So if you look at every single one of these, they all say navigation. Okay. By the way, those of you who are with NJP and so have my toolbar, on your toolbar you have this show hide formula tool right here. Those of you who don't, notice that control and I believe it's control tilde, but let me just make sure I'm not, yeah, control tilde. Tilde, for those of you who don't know what a tilde is usually in the top left-hand corner of your keyboard, and it looks like a little squiggly line. that shows and hides your formulas. So you can see every single one of them is pointing to navigation selection. Not any of them is a copy. It's all the same formula of linking. And then I can just do Control tilde to bring it back into place as well. So both of those things are kind of nice. Did that help answer your question?
It did, at least in part. I'm wondering if instead of just copying the data over, I'm actually wanting to manipulate the data. So let's say I want quarterly averages for ice cream. Write my formula just putting what you've got there, the equal, quote, navigation selection, etc., in parens in the middle of that formula, or how does that work?
Sure. So you're saying you want to have an average of the first 3 months?
Sure.
Okay. So in that case, this wouldn't be here, right? It would just be first quarter average or something like that.
Uh-huh.
First. So, yeah, so then it would be equals. I would probably, okay, let's just do it this way. So equals AVG, average, actually. So I can start typing it in, or I can use, and I can double click. So now I've got my function. It's no longer a formula, now it's a function. But I've got my function name in here. I come over here, drag across the first three. Well, first quarter would be in April as well. So drag across the first four. First three, of course. That's what I meant. And then press enter. And then we're going to take that and drag it down. So we've got navigation B5, D5, B6, D6, B7, D7. Let's just make sure that that looks right. Yep, sure does. Right? D5 to D5, D6 to D6.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Perfect's good enough. You're welcome. However, there is another topic that might interest you, I don't know, is called consolidate. So if you have something like this, by the way, did you guys all see that nifty little trick? If you had my tips class before, you know it already, but this is sort of my workbook that, notice it says Complete Excel Training Workbook. So it's got like sample sheets of all these different things that I like to use. So there's tons of sheets, and it's such a pain to scroll through your sheets. So if you right-click down here in the bottom left where those little scroll arrows are, it will show you the first, I don't know, 10, 15 sheets. But then if you click on more sheets, it's going to show you every single sheet you have, which I feel is much faster than going one at a time. But notice I've got first quarter, second quarter, third, fourth quarter, and yearly totals. And so this is first quarter. This is a really simplified thing, but I can actually go to yearly totals, and I can do what's called consolidate, and it's gonna bring those numbers in through the sheets, either in a linked fashion or in a cutoff fashion. So what I mean by that is, if you're going to update your first, second, third, or fourth quarter, you might want it linked because then it'll show up in the final. Or if you've already published your data for this year, you may not want it linked. You may just want it cut off, and so then it's a one-time consolidate. So that would be another topic we could do if you wanted to, and it's a pretty fast topic as well.
Is it in the handbook?
Yes. I don't know if it's in what I had you guys print out, but it is definitely in my handout. Consolidate is. So I don't know if you want to do that or not, but you think about that while we cover the other questions that were asked, one of which was, what was the second one?
Updating a graph.
Yeah.
Updating a chart. That's right. So we're doing our chart. I'm not sure if I have a specific chart thing, so we're just going to use this because this is pretty perfectly what she was requesting. So I've highlighted if you want to have Excel create a chart for you, the easiest way is to make sure you you highlight your headings on both sides, And actually, generally speaking, you do not have your totals in there. That just makes no sense whatsoever. So I would actually stop here. That is if I want a chart for all my ice cream cones, cherries, and nuts. So then I can just go to my insert, and I can go to whichever kind of chart I think I might want. So if I want a column chart, let's say I want a column chart stacked or not stacked, I'm just going to do a clustered column.
This is
okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was just checking to make sure that I was doing okay on that. Notice it inserted it right into my document, sometimes not in a convenient place. I'm just going to move it here. And I can make it larger so that you can actually see it by going to a corner. You do always want to go to a corner, in my opinion, when you're working with a chart, because otherwise everything doesn't stay proportional, and charts can really do a good job lying when you start dragging one edge or another. All right, so now we have this, and the question is, how do we get July, August, September? And there's so many cool ways, but one of the coolest, I think, is notice you've got, when you're in your chart, you actually see what your chart is referring to. And notice you've got the little handles down here. If you want, you can just drag that handle as far as you'd like and let go, and now you've got through December. So life doesn't get much better than that. And the reverse is true, of course, as well. If you don't want some of these, you can move it back, and now you have only through September. So while we're here on chart, charting ability in Excel is much better than it ever was as far as creating nice-looking charts, because it now has all sorts of really pretty formatting options that it never had before. So make sure that you do look at your design. You have so many different looks that you can choose from to make it look prettier. So you can really make very professional-looking charts really quite quickly and easily now. While we're on charts, is there anything else in charting that you have any questions on? Because when you're in a chart, just know that you always have these 3 extra tabs here, which are quite nice, that help you with charts. If you look at some of these, they're pretty cool. Like right now, notice January through December's on the bottom. Ice cream cones, cherries, and nuts are over on the right. And up here, just by clicking on switch rows and columns, I can have my ice cream cones on the bottom, and I can have my January through December over on the right. Just all kinds of very easy ways of manipulating charts with these different options. Okay, if you want axis titles, which means like on your X and Y axis, you can ask for them by just saying, hey, primary horizontal axis or vertical axis. So vertical being up and down, horizontal is your x-axis title. So if you want one, you can say, I'd like a title below my axis, and then it'll show you the title below your axis, and you can type in whatever you want there. I mean, they really have done a nice job making things easy. Any other questions on charts?
Yeah, I have one. Can you remind me how to change scale?
Oh, over here?
Yeah, let's say I want the chart to start at $500 instead of 0, for example.
Yeah. So remember the right-click or double-clicking if you want to do that, except I'm not on the right thing here. Here we go. So I right-clicked on the area that you're wanting to change. Remember, right-clicking and double-clicking are always a good thing. And then we're going to format that axis. I said axis. And then here is where you have your axis options of auto, so it's going to start automatically. If I move this over, you can actually see at 0 and go through 14, 0 and go through 14, because that's what Excel wants to do. If you don't like that, you can click on Fixed, and you can change it to whatever you want. You can say, I want it to start at 500. And then you can also change your maximum to being something different. You can say maybe 20,000 or something like that, which means it'll scrunch, whoa, a little bit more than 20,000 there. And, whoa. Go away time. There we go. So that's where you would do that.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Any other questions about charts? Okay. We had a third question.
I didn't write it down. I'm sorry. Could the person on the phone who asked their other question ask again?
Yeah, it was just about sorting out duplicates from the.
Duplicate. Thank you so much for the duplicate question. Okay. So what I'm going to do is create my own little duplicates here. Okay, so I got a lot of ice cream cones, cherries, and nuts, right? So the first thing I would do is sort on whatever will determine the duplicate value. Like for me, it'll be ice cream cones, cherries, and nuts. So I'm going to sort it just by clicking on A to Z, or I can come here and do A to Z. There's two different ways of doing this. I'm thinking, well, there's a few different ways. Let me try a couple. I'm sorry, because I'm trying to think of the best way, but all of these are great topics anyway. So the first way that I'm going to teach you, that I'm going to look at, is data subtotaling. If you're not familiar with data subtotaling, you absolutely should be, because it's one of the most wonderful features that will save you time. If I want to know how many of these I have, I can go to, I wonder if I could use the pivot table for it. My mind's going 100 miles an hour on how I can use it, but we're going to start with just data subtotaling, and we'll see which way works best. So for data subtotaling, the word data should come to mind. So there's data. And over here, do you see where it says subtotal? So in data subtotaling, what you're asking it to do is you're saying for every break, for every change in something or other, start totaling. So like, let's say cherries were clients. Then for every change in client name or for every change in item or whatever it is, you're wanting to know how many there are. So how many rows of cherries do I have, or how many cherries did I sell in January, February, March, that sort of thing. So you're wanting a subtotal row, and you want it to add certain columns. Okay? So rather than you having to, let's make all these the same height. Did you see how I did that? I came up here and I clicked on the top left corner, which highlighted the entire workbook, and then I went between any two rows till I had a double-headed arrow, and I double-clicked to snap them all into the same height so that you wouldn't think there was a blank row in there. And so instead of having to go to the bottom of cherries, insert a row, and then subtotal all the columns, what I can do is I can go to, click anywhere in your data, which I already have, go to subtotal, and say for every change in, oh, unfortunately I don't have this labeled, so it says column A, which is fine, it'll still work, but instead I'm going to say, I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to say description or item or something, okay? So once again, I'm going to go to subtotal, and I'm going to say for every change in description. And most of the time, whatever you are going to for each change in description is what you sorted on, okay? So for each change in description, what do you want to do? And so if I want to add these numbers, then I am going to sum, right? So let's say I want to add January, February, March. I want to know what I sold in each of the months for cherries, cones, nuts, that sort of thing. So all I have to do is check off all the totals I want to see. And then click on OK. And what it does is it also lets me see outline levels. So if I click on 2, it's going to show me this is how many cherries, how many cones, how much ice cream, and how many nuts. Now, what I could do, I suppose, is, so let's say you did this with your sheet, whomever's asking the question. If I just now select those 4, because those are the ones that are no longer duplicates, right? Because all your duplicates would be underneath. You wouldn't be seeing your duplicates. If these were addresses, you would be seeing one of each address, right?
Yep.
So just by highlighting them, do you see that in my bottom right of my taskbar, it says count of 4?
Yep.
So if you were to draw, I mean, that would be an easy way, or, you know, you can use equals count. Well, in this case, since they're alphabetic, see there's a count and there's a CountA. Since these are not numeric, I would use CountA and drag across them and press enter. Oh, 469. So they're getting what's underneath also. So
Yeah.
So
That's one of my questions, is how you get it to count without counting what's underneath.
well, that's another topic, which actually is the very first topic on what you printed out, which is a topic in Excel called tables. And tables is a very misunderstood feature because people think, well, everything in Excel is in a table, which is true, but there's actually a table function. And putting something in a table, you'll see that the totals are not just going to be an equal sum. They're going to look very different, and one of the differences is they are going to allow you to count only visible if you want to. Okay? So let's look at that. So before we do that, are there any questions just on data subtotaling? Because it is a phenomenal feature. Okay? A common question that most people would ask, if you're not asking it now, you will ask when you're stuck in this position and you go, oh my gosh, now I need to add a few more rows, and how do I get out of it? Again, you would just click on subtotal. Whoa. Okay, hang on. Cancel out. It's because I had multiple things highlighted. Just click anywhere in there. Click on subtotal. Do you see where it says remove all? And now you're right back to being back to where you were, without having hit undo and going, oh my God, what just happened? All right. So the tables feature. So I'm in my data. Again, you just have to be anywhere in your data. And one place to make something a table is to come over here where it says Format as Table. Format as Table doesn't just mean it's going to format. It's also going to convert this into a table. And we'll see what that means in a minute. So, for instance, I am going, I'm so sorry, my mouse is going a little bit crazy here. So, Format as Table. I'm going to try and pick one that, okay, here we go, that's every other row formatted with color. Because anybody who has ever done this before knows that if you do that and you add more rows, it's a pain, right? Because they won't have that color. But they will if you use the tables function. Okay, so notice that simply by clicking in the table, if there are no blank rows or columns, that it automatically selected my entire table. Okay? Notice that you have to decide, does your table have headers or not? Well, yes it does, January, February, March, right? So we're good with that. So I'm going to click on OK, and look what happened. So I got my table nicely formatted, right? Notice also that I've got my headings up here. And a lot of you may have run across, when you have a long table like this, that as you scroll down, those headings scroll up off the top of your page, and you have to do a freeze panes, right, to stop that. Watch what happens when it's in a table. As soon as I scroll down, look what happened. These are no longer showing A, B, C, D. The headings went right up into the A, B, C, D area. Isn't that cool? So you no longer have to do a freeze panes if you're using the tables feature. It's there, okay, number one. Now, warning, caveat, if you click outside of the table, then you don't get to see it anymore. So I still kind of like freeze panes, but as long as you're in the table, you do. Okay? So the tables function does that. The tables function also, notice, put these little auto filters on there. So if you wanted to say, I only want to see cherries, or I only want to see cones, you're already set up with autofilters on every single column. Okay? That's another neat thing. There's another thing here called remove duplicates. So if I wanted to, and I know you don't want to remove duplicates, and I'm not saying you have to, and we'll look at that in a minute, but I just want to show you the feature. So I'm going to make a copy of this sheet. What's the fastest way for me to copy the sheet? Okay, so what I do, the very fastest way is to not copy by doing a Control-A or copy-paste. The fastest is to make a copy of the entire sheet. That way all your formatting is perfect. So you know how when you drag a sheet, you know how that moves it? So if I drag this here, it'll move it here. But if before I let go, you hold your Control key down, do you see that little plus there? That means you're making an exact duplicate copy. Now you have two. Exactly the same. So even though you don't want to get rid of that information in your first sheet, you can get rid of it in your second. And then just delete your sheet later if you want. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying it's a possibility. Question?
Repeat that again.
Yes. So, and this is not just for making sheets. This is for everything known to mankind. If you always exaggerate, but I notice Bridget does too, so I don't feel bad.
I call it embroidering.
Oh, okay. So let's say I want to move this. I select it, I go to a border, and I drag it. That's moving, right? But if I go to a border, drag wherever I want, but before I let go, I hold my Control key down. Do you see there's now a plus? As long as your Control key is down, when you've dragged and now you let go, you are going to copy. That's true of an appointment in Outlook, a contact in Outlook, a paragraph in Word, and a sheet tab, which is what I did. So I went down to my sheet tab, like limits, and I just dragged the tab, but instead of moving, I wanted to copy. So then I hold my Control key down before I let go. Now you see the plus in that sheet of paper. Let go, and boom, I've made two exact.
It's an exact copy, including the formatting of the columns and the rows and everything.
So your columns and rows aren't all screwed up the way they are when you copy and paste. That's right. Absolute identical copy. So in this case, if we go back to our table tools, now we're only going to see that when we're in the table. As soon as we click out, it's gone, because why should it be there if you can't use it, right? So when we're in a table, you can look at the table tools, and one of the neat things is remove duplicates. So I click on remove duplicates. It says, what are you using to decide whether this is a duplicate? Does the whole row need to be identical? If the whole row needs to be identical, that means
Good night. Thank you, Amy.
That means all of these should be checked. If the only thing that for me makes it a duplicate is that they're cherries, so for you, if it's just the client number or whatever, or the client address, if that's the only thing that needs to be the same, then you want to uncheck everything except, so I'm going to say unselect all since I'm lazy and I don't want to do them all, except description.
Mm-hmm.
So I want every time there's two, I want one cherry, one nut, one whatever. So I'm just going to do description. My data does have headers. I'm going to click on OK, and 4 unique values remain. Right there, you've got your answer, right?
Which is, yeah, and that's great, because then even if you didn't have a unique client identifier, you could do it based on like name, date of birth, and something else. You could use multiple columns to check for duplicates.
Right, you could use multiple, yeah, because you wouldn't want to do Tom Jones because you could have 5 different Tom Joneses or whatever.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's great. That's really cool. I had no idea.
Yeah, so that's another neat function of a table. Another neat function of a table, I don't know if you can see, but again, the bottom right cell was a little different than of the whole table, the corner, excuse me, not the cell. But if I go here and I drag down, look at that. There goes my formatting. But I don't even have to do that. All I have to do is come down here and type in gummy worms. I'll just do gummies and hit enter, and look at that. It automatically fills the formatting in for me, absolutely everything for me.
Automatically.
Automatically. Yep. If I come over here and I type in total, oh, shoot, I had total? Go away, total. We're deleting that. And we're going to shorten this up. Okay. Oh, give me a break. Let's see if it lets me delete it. Okay, I give up. I should have gotten rid of that first. But what I was going to show you, at least the word total is here. I'm going to type in equals sum, right?
It's okay.
Or actually, I'm going to do a sum, because it should do the sum for me. So I'm going to click on the summation symbol. Click on the summation symbol, letting me, okay, come here. There we go. All right, and I'm going to press enter. And do you see how it didn't just do it to the first one? It assumes that since you want summing, you're going to want it all the way down. So it did it all the way down.
And that, again, is because it's a table.
Because it's a table.
Okay.
Okay? Notice, though, remember I told you, the thing that people don't like about tables is things look a little bit different. This is an equal sum of B5 through M5. It's equal sum of the table 14. It's the 14th table in my entire workbook. January through December. So it uses a different kind of notation. Okay? Back here, though, I'm going to, now I don't even have to type in the total row. I can click on total row, and do you see how it put in a total row for me? And then if I come here and click where I want my total, notice that I can click on the down arrow and just tell it whether I want an average, a sum, a min, or whatever it is. Is that not the coolest thing ever? So I can do sum. So it's going to add. I didn't have to know the equal sum function or anything. All I did was do sum, drag that across. These are my totals. Okay? Now, this is what I wanted to talk to you about. Notice that this doesn't say sum. It says subtotal. It is a different way of having your function. And so in the back of your handout, maybe not. Maybe I did it in the next version. But what I wanted to tell you was 109 is the 9 is what says it's a sum. If I change this to average, it might be it's a 1. If I change this to count, it's going to be a 2. Do you see the very last number? Okay, so the last number is just saying what kind of function is it. The 10, and I have to see which is which. If you delete those, then let me look and make sure which is which. But if you get rid of them, it will either show or not show hidden values. Because you were asking earlier, how do I not count hidden values? And that's one of the neat things about this tables feature. Let's just do it. So I don't. So right now this is 3,400, right? Mm-hmm. So if I delete this, not delete it. If I hide it, I'm going to right-click and hide, and it says 2,400. So it looks like that is correct, right? So 9 plus 8 plus 7. So it's not showing the hidden values, okay? If, though, I change this, so 109 will not show hidden values. If you decide you do want to see hidden values, then if you change it to 9, oh, here you get to see. 1 is average, 2 is count, 3 is count. See that? Okay. So, but anyway, so I delete those. Click enter, and you see how now, even though that value is hidden, you're seeing 3,400. So the 10 in front of it says count all values, where, I mean, don't only count displayed values, where this one, just the 9, says count hidden values as well. Where the sum will show you always all values. Okay? Hidden or not. So there are so many neat little nuances to the tables feature. And like, I love the remove duplicate. And then if for some reason you aren't liking it and you want to convert back out of a table, you just say convert to range. And it says you want to make it a normal range. Click on yes, and now you're back to looking at things the way you were before. And I can just hit undo, so I'm back in tables feature. But like I say, the tables feature is so nice. In even design, I can say I don't want banded rows anymore, and you see how it removes the banding. Now I would like to have special formatting in the first column, and it'll make it, bold or whatever. The last column, maybe I want banded columns now instead of banded rows. So formatting-wise, just every way you can think of it, just a really nice feature. Anybody have any questions? And so if you look at page 75 and beyond, that's why I started there, because a lot of people don't know about the tables function. That's right in your handout. Okay, so I think we answered the 3 questions that we have, and we have 15 extra minutes. So what else would you like to learn? Okay, so if I don't hear anything, then I'm just going to start talking, because that's what I do best.
One question about tables. If you
Yeah.
have it formatted as a table, does that stop you from then saying, oh, I'd like to make a chart out of this data?
No,
Okay.
no, absolutely not. You can still highlight. So the question was, can I still select as, oh, by the way, if I now add another number in here, do you see how it automatically added that to the sum? Which doesn't always happen, right? That you have to always check and make sure. But this will make sure that it does add to the sum. And if I'm here and I press tab, do you see how it moved my total row down and gave me room to put more? So those are pretty phenomenal. So in addition to gummy bears, I can put whipped cream, and look at that, automatically added. So I mean, it's a very neat function that I hope you use a lot. Okay. So
Would you talk about parsing data?
parsing data. Love to talk about parsing data. So I'm going to go to my parsing data screen.
This comes up a lot for people I know,
Okay. Yeah.
well, at least here.
If somebody else sees it before I do, let me know. Parse. There we go. So for those of you who don't know what parsing is, it means splitting up. So something like this, a lot of times you might want to split this up so that you have the zip code perhaps separately so that you can sort and get both mailing rates. Or you might say, you know what, this is nice, but my problem is that I wanted to have last name first so I could sort on last name. I can't sort on last name this way, right? So let's take this one to start because it's easier. So it's another function that's a data function. So we're going to go to data. I'm sorry, before I went to data, notice I selected what I wanted to separate. Then I go to data, and it's text to columns because this is text and I want them to go to columns. Now, if your data is coming from a large computer and you can just say, you could draw a line straight down through it and say, hey, this is where the name ends, then you could say fixed width. And let me show you how that works. I click on that, click on next, and this is what I mean. If I can say right here, that's always going to be the end of the first name, or drag it over a little bit, then I can use fixed. But that only works usually when it's coming from a mainframe and you can say the data is always positioned this way. If it's not, then that's what delimited means. Delimited means where can I separate the data? And in this case, so I'm going to click on delimited and I'm going to click on next. And in this case, what's separating first from the last name is not a tab, but a space. And you see how it just immediately went, oh, okay, boom. It removes the space, which is really nice. So whatever your delimiter is, it removes it. And it will now do a perfect job separating. Now at this point, because I've got no other problems, which I will create problems in the future, but now I don't, I can actually hit finish, and it beautifully separated the two. So now if you wanted to, you could sort on this column, and you'd be in great shape, right? But let's say you say, well, that's nice, but I really wanted them to all be in one column. So then you could do an equals, and concatenate is the term for bringing it together. So I can do equals. I can just start typing in con. That's good enough, and it displays different choices. So I'm going to double-click on concatenate. It'll type it in for me. And then what you want to do is you want to click on, I want my last name to be first. Okay, so that's Jones now. It's going to be first. But then, and then separating each, notice it's trying to show me that after what my first text, I need a comma. Okay, so I'm going to put in a comma. And don't you generally want like a comma space between them? Whenever you're typing in text, you always have to have quotes around it. So quote, comma, space, quote. That's saying that between my first name, I'm going to have a comma and a space. After my last name, before my first name. Okay? So then I need another comma because now I'm going to have a third piece of text, which is the first name. Does that make sense? Well, let me hit enter and it'll make more sense. Okay? So what I did was I said equals concatenate. Then I want B4, which is Jones. Then I want quote, comma, space, quote. So basically I want comma, space in there. And then I want A4, which is Joe. Let's do that again because I see some puzzled looks here. So I'm going to do equals, con, double-click on concatenate, the first thing that I want in there, comma, then what do I want for my second thing? Well, my second thing, I want text. So all text has to be within quotes. You know, this could say, and the last name is. So you could, anything you want between quotes is fine, but I have comma space. And then a comma to separate it from the third thing that I want, which is the first name, and press enter. Boom. But I really didn't need to do it a second time because once I've got it done the first time, I can just double-click it. If I drag my fill handle, that's fine, but I can also double-click it, and it will always go as far down as the one next to it, so it saves you a lot of dragging. Now the problem is if I just leave it like this, if I no longer want these columns, right? That little noise says, my battery is running low. That usually happens when you don't plug in. So here you go. Okay. My computer is much happier. So before you delete your data, if what you want is you want this text, because this is not actual text, it is a formula. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Home tab, I'm going to do a copy, and instead of the normal paste, what you're wanting to do is paste values. Paste values means replace formulas with the values that they have produced. So if I click on paste values here, what I just did was change concatenate to Joe Jones. So now I can delete this and I'm fine. Now that was like the most simple parsing you've ever done in your life because most data isn't that nice. Like sometimes you're going to have a middle initial. And so then you're going to have 3 columns of data, and etc. So I deliberately made this not nice. The way I made it not nice was I put in San Francisco, meaning that on a space, I put in New York. I just wasn't very nice. And so let's see why. I'm going to go to data. If you don't understand what I'm saying, I'm going to go back to delimited, click on next. If I separated this on the space, look at that. That would be yuck, right? not at all the same number of columns. So some of you might be on top of things and say, oh, Sandy, why not do the comma? Well, that is definitely better. But the problem is, remember I said that whatever your separator is, it's going to remove it from your data, which is nice, but you notice how every single one of these has a space in front of it? And I can't just search and replace spaces. I can do that, but if I did, I'd get rid of the spaces in San Francisco and New York. So I have this example in my book because this has happened so frequently. And all it takes is a minute of your time in advance to do a search and replace. So you can either do Control H, which is search and replace, or if you didn't know that, go back to the Home tab and go to Find and Select, go to Replace. And what you're going to do is you're going to search for a comma space and replace it with, let's say, just a comma. Because then when I parse on the comma, there will be no extra spaces, right? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say replace all, and boom. Now let's see what happens when I go to data text to columns. Next. Look at that. It cleaned up all the spaces here, cleaned up all the spaces here. Okay? Now, I do still have a problem over here. I still don't have my zip code separate. Now, I'm a big believer in putting 2 spaces between your state and your zip. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to cancel out of here, and I'm going to replace 2 spaces with a comma. Replace all. So now I've replaced 2 spaces with a comma, and now if I go to text to columns, I've got perfection. Are you always lucky enough to have perfection? Maybe you don't believe in 2 spaces before your zip, in which case you'd be sad. But maybe you don't have New York spelled out like that. Maybe you have NY, and it's a non-issue. You could have separated everything else based on commas, and then just on the last column, you would have done it one more time on a space. You know, so sometimes you just do have to do a little work, but I'm just trying to show you sometimes if you do some work up front, it will really help you out. Because now remember the first time I said you could just click finish. This time I made it a little harder on you. If you click finish, the bad news that you're going to find out really quickly is that this zip code that starts with a 0, your 0's gone forever. You don't have a second chance to make a good first impression here. You need to do it right. So instead of clicking finish, what you're going to do is you're going to click on next. That's what the next bar is for. So I'm going to click on next. The one I'm worried about is this one. So I'm going to click on this heading, and instead of it just being a general format, I'm going to make it a text format. Okay? And so now, when I click on finish, these little green arrows are saying, hey, I don't think this is really what you want. It's a number, and it's being stored as text, but it is exactly what you want. Okay, so you just leave it alone. You could say ignore error if you wanted to, so you don't see the green things anymore. But once again, you've got perfection. Now you can sort on zip code and get those bulk mailing rates if you want.
That's great. Thank you.
It's a very, very nice function. Very nice.
So we have 5 minutes. Is there anything else out there anybody on the phone would like to ask about?
Could you explain the difference between count and CountA functions?
Yeah, the way I simply think about it is count is for numbers and CountA is for alpha. So if so a good example might be if I'm doing contributions for, so Bridget, Sandy, Tom, and Joe, we all work for whomever, and this is a United Way campaign. And Bridget, she loves United Way. She's going to give $10,000. I'll give $200 because I don't make as much. $10 for Tom and $3,000 for Johnny. So, oh, excuse me. bad girl. Okay, or I do X's to say, actually, Tom is not going to contribute. He doesn't believe in the cause. Here we go. So now, if I count these, I would do equals count. But if I were to do these, because they are they're non-numeric, I would do equal CountA, which to me, I just say alphabetic, equal CountA, so that it can count X's. Okay? So whether they're X's or whether they're BST, I really didn't need to, whatever it is, you're trying to count. If it's alphabetic, if it's alpha, use CountA. If it's numbers, use count.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? It's nice because that means, if you've got apples, cones, cherries, and nuts, you can count them by just doing a CountA. So you can't count alpha otherwise. Still have a couple minutes. Any other questions? Anybody ever like if, and, or just if? Like if, if it's over 2,000, say great job, or if something is equal to something else.
Fall in the logic category.
This would fall in the logic category. Yes.
I know there's a bunch of logic stuff here in the handout, too.
Yes, there's a bunch of logic stuff in the handout because I don't want to have to go through and look through all these things. I also use it to compare things. If I had two lists and I wanted to see where I may have typed in something wrong, and instead of having to look at it myself, I could say, if this does not equal this, say, unequal or whatever. But it just allows you to, or let's go back to that concatenate thing. Remember here I said I wanted, I don't know if we can back up that far. Oh, we can. How nice is that? Okay. So let's say I didn't just have last name, first name. Let's say I did have middle initial. Well, if true, then I might want to put a space, right, between first name and middle initial. But when I don't have a middle initial, now all of a sudden I have an extra space. Bummer, right? So what I would do, I wouldn't just say put in a space. I would say if this column is not blank, put in a space. Otherwise, don't. So that way I don't get double spaces and things like that. So the if statements are just very, very, very handy. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, let's just do it.
And while you're doing that, I just want to let people know, because they're going to start dropping off the phone. They already are. Next month was supposed to be a training on legal server reports, but it's not going to be. Instead, it's actually going to be a PowerPoint training, the one that was originally scheduled for September. So if you want to mark your calendars for May 13th, we're going to be doing PowerPoint. Okay, Sandy, whatever you were going to say here now.
Okay. So what I'm doing, instead of concatenate, you can also use ampersand, but a little bit of a cheater's way, but it works really well. Except I forgot to put my space here. Is that it? And another ampersand. Okay, so I've got Joe P. Jones, right? Working great. Drag that down. Do you notice a double space between Ed and Thomas, a double space between Lori and Simmons? So most people, that doesn't make them very happy. So what you can do is you can say, what we don't want is this space here between middle initial and last name. We don't want that extra space if there's no middle initial. So you would do an if this B4 does not equal blank, which is two quotes next to each other. And then I always say, oh, well, you don't even have to remember because it tells you right here, value of true, value of false. I always think it's better to tell the truth than a lie, so true is first. So if it's true, if it's not blank, then I do want the, then I do want the space. Wait, what did I have here? If it does not equal blank, then I want this space. Otherwise, I don't want to do anything. But don't want to do anything is not, so I'm going to just do quote, quote, with no space in between, and an ending parentheses. So I put if B4 does not equal blank, which is quote, quote, then put in a space. Otherwise, don't put in anything. Does that make sense? And hit enter. So it looks like it works for my Joe P. Jones. Let's see if it works for my Ed Thomas. Do you see how that just nicely just shoved that up? So basically, it just, the way an if statement works, and it's in your handout, is if, and then a left paren, and then this is your argument. This is if B4 does not equal nothing, basically. So if B4 does not equal nothing, then what do you want? And I put a space, and then if it does have, then I want a space, and otherwise I don't want a space. Okay? It can get a lot more complicated than that, but that if statement is so nice in checking things for you instead of you having to worry about it. So, yeah. Anyway, I guess we're out of time. I want to thank you guys for coming, and hopefully you know a little bit more about Excel, the most wonderful product in the world.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.